Joining us right now on the line from Japers Rink, and a chance to talk with JP himself, John Press, joining us on the line. Hey, John.
Hey, how are you?
Well, pretty good after last night. Let's get right to it about the Game 1 victory for the Caps. I think just in terms of looking forward in this best of seven and the balance of power, I think it was already in Washington's favor in the 1 versus 8. But if Sean Couturier is not able to come back in the series, the Flyers are still being rather coy with information, but CSN Philadelphia reporting he's out for the series. If Couturier really is not going to play again in this series, what does Philadelphia have left in the tank at this point with just 1 game down and potentially 6 to go?
It's big, obviously. It's a really big injury for the Flyers. I mean, that's their top defensive forward, a key penalty killer, their number 2 center, probably the guy they would most prefer face Ovechkin and Backstrom's line on a regular basis. So losing him presents them with a host of problems in terms of matchups, as if they didn't have those tough matchups to begin with. But, losing a guy like that, now you've got your Giroux line, and you have to decide whether you go power versus power, putting them up against the Backstrom line, and then the Kuznetsov line can go crazy against, Shen or whoever the new second line is going to be, or you try to keep that line, the Giroux line, away from Ovechkin and Backstrom, and then, what's your answer for Ovechkin and Backstrom? And, there's probably not going to be a very good one. So that's at 5-on-5, and then, you lose your top penalty killer. We saw, obviously, last night how important the power play is and can be. I thought the Caps' power play, even when it didn't score, had a number of real good chances. Yeah, it's really a big, big loss for a Philly team that obviously was already down in terms of the talent up front. And, you ask what they've got left in the tank. At this point, to me, it comes down to their goaltender, and that's it. If they're going to somehow pull off the upset, and I think it was probably the case even before the Couturier injury, it was going to be on the back of Steve Mason, who I thought did have a terrific game last night, but just it wasn't enough.
No, and yeah, very much thought that Mason was, the difference between what ended up 2-0 and what could have been 4 or 5-0
Yep.
easily. Up on Japers Rink right now, Capitals versus Flyers game 1. What worked and what didn't? Well, obviously a lot did, and right at the top of the list, while we're on the subject of goaltending, Braden Holtby. He didn't have to do a whole lot last night in making only 19 saves, but in doing so, he looked awfully good doing it last night, and a third playoff shutout for him. And Braden, Cap's going to go as far as Braden's going to take them in all likelihood, and it looked like a really good start for him last night.
Yeah, I agree. The team, I think we'll get back to talking about it in a moment, but obviously had those 3 early penalties that no team wants to start out the game 15 minutes in, being shorthanded 3 times. But Holtby and the rest of the penalty killers did a tremendous job not allowing anything on the scoreboard, and from there it was almost cruise control. I think Holtby faced 8 shots over the last 2 periods, and one of those was a meaningless shot with 2 seconds left. So basically, he faced 7 shots over the last 40 minutes, and that's a testament to the team in front of him. But he stopped everything he saw last night and looked at every bit the goalie that we think he is, that we know he is, that he was for the first half of the season, and that he was towards the end of the regular season after a bit of a hiccup through that midwinter stretch when the team itself had a hiccup as well. So he looks locked in, he looks ready to go, and if last night was any indication, this is a guy who's going to carry the team.
For all the things that went right last night, John, it seemed like in the third period, what we saw at midseason when the Caps were at their most successful, locking down leads late and giving very little hope to the opposition. Even before Wayne Simmons' early exit last night, prior to what could have been a power play with the Tom Wilson boarding hit on Andrew McDonald. At 5-on-5, there was so little being generated by Philadelphia. And I really thought that through the course of the season, when the Caps were at their best, that was what they did. There was very little chance having that strong late game, as Kevin Klein put in this post that's up on Japers right now. That was one of their hallmarks, and I thought that was something we definitely saw last night.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't just a turtling effort where they're clearing pucks out and just waiting for the next wave of Philly attacks. It was a little bit more control of the play, and that's something I think you saw over the course of this year that sort of differentiated it a bit from last year, where they struggled a bit with leads, even if it didn't necessarily show up on the scoreboard in terms of shot totals and the like. So it was encouraging to see them execute that, to clamp down that lead in a way that they didn't against the Flyers a couple weeks ago, if you'll recall, but they were able to last night. I think maybe we're talking a little different narrative here if Wayne Simmonds doesn't lose his composure at the end there. Maybe they get one on that power play, because I didn't love Tom Wilson's decision making there, and you can't take that penalty at that time in that game. But luckily, Wayne Simmonds bailed him out. Anytime that the Flyers are willing to trade their top goal scorer for a Caps fourth liner for the last 7 minutes of a 1-goal game, I think the Caps will take that trade. So, Simmonds bailed Wilson out, but certainly the way the Caps clamped down, you've got to be happy with that.
And if we're getting, and maybe it's a little nitpicky, or maybe it's not, the first period last night, I mean, the Caps really, and I talked with Marcus Johansson about this in the room today, the first period you have a number of penalties that end up, it breaks up the rhythm and the flow of being able to roll four lines. I mean, Washington's strength in this series is going to be, if it's the first line, second line, third line, even the fourth line generating some chances last night, that's when they're going to be at their best. It will knock everything out of sync for some time if you are in a parade to the penalty box. The only reason that the Caps perhaps didn't start sooner last night with what was a pretty dominating final 40 minutes was because it was a steady parade to the penalty box. That is something they're going to have to keep in mind and hopefully be a little more disciplined moving forward.
No question. They probably got lucky not yielding anything. You're tiring out your penalty killers. You're tiring out your goaltender. You're not allowing your best players, your best skaters, a chance to even get on the ice and get into any sort of rhythm. And they all know that. That's not something that they probably need to be told. They know they need to be smarter and better disciplined. And over the course of the last two periods, certainly the course of the second half of the game, they were by far the better disciplined team. And they got the power play goal, and they got the Simmonds penalty to even it up with Wilson. So, the Caps, it was almost, two teams going in different directions in terms of discipline and composure over the course of that game. And, it was not an ideal start, but they were able to withstand it. And, this is a team that we've seen not necessarily have the best starts at times during this past season, during previous seasons in Game 1s. If you'll recall last year against the Islanders, it wasn't exactly a great show in Game 1 of that series. So all in all, 15 seconds, if that's the only stumble they have in this series, ramping up back to game speed, I think we'll all take that.
JP, before we let you go, your thoughts on the defensive pairs. Dmitry Orlov starting the game last night with Nate Schmidt. We didn't see a lot of Nate Schmidt down the stretch. We saw Orlov switching to play with Brooks Orpik for quite a bit of time there after the midway point, perhaps, of the second period, right around in there. And then, so a little bit in flux on that, but is a lot of that, you think, going to be situational? Is it going to be, like today, it looked like Schmidt and Orlov back together and skating at practice as if it would be the same setup to begin Game 2 tomorrow. But what do you think about the potential for a little bit of mix mastering on the back end?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's going to continue to be in flux. It was down the stretch, and probably will be. Obviously, Orpik took a couple penalties early in that one that weren't great. Orlov took a penalty as well early in the second or midway through the second. I think it will be situational to an extent. Right now, for whatever reason, it seems that Nate Schmidt's fallen out of favor a little bit, and we saw down the stretch Dmitry Orlov had his moments where he was a bit of a risky proposition on the ice. But, I think that the more, as this playoff season goes on, the more you can roll 3 pairs, the better off you're going to be, especially for this Caps team. That's another area where they have a depth advantage over just about anyone that they could possibly play. And so I think you're going to want to see everybody involved. Maybe you move away from a Nate Schmidt if you're protecting a lead, but he doesn't scare me very much. Dmitry Orlov doesn't scare me too much either. So I would try to manage those two as a pair. Make sure they're not out there against Giroux if you can avoid it, and see where you can go from there, because they have 3 competent pairs, and there's no reason not to flex that advantage as the series wears on and you see these Philly pairs wear down. You're going to see that advantage be more and more pronounced, and it's only going to be that if Barry Trotz keeps using these guys and rolling them and doesn't shorten his bench too much.
Your coverage for the Capitals during the Stanley Cup playoffs, great stuff as always on Japers Rink. Stop there in the morning and pick up all the links to all of the articles and plus a lot of great original content as well. John Press joining us from Japers Rink. JP, good to talk with you, sir, and appreciate the time.
Thank you.